Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Northern Virginia Technology Council for our virtual Masters of Leadership in Tech series, a new season of Leaders event. Please welcome Jennifer Taylor, NVTC's President and CEO.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Taryn. I'm so delighted to welcome you to today's Masters of Leadership in Tech event, featuring the co-founder and CEO for Class Technologies, Michael Chasen. It was so great to see many of you in the social lounge prior to the event. Please join us thereafter for some more networking. By way of background, NVTC is your trade association representing the Greater Washington region's tech community. Our mission is to connect, educate, and advocate for our members to advance a thriving tech ecosystem where we live and work. The Masters of Leadership series is made possible by our sponsors, Attain Partners, our signature platinum sponsor, Attain, the Consumer Technology Association, Mantech, and Virginia Tech, our platinum sponsors. Silver sponsors, CNSI and Uninet, our PR and marketing advisor, the Merit Group, and our media partners, iHeartRadio, iHeartMedia, Scoop News Group, and Washington Technology. We thank you so much for your support. Also, the NVTC business and academic partners support NVTC year-long in all of our programs, and we thank the following companies for their support as well. Booz Allen Hamilton, CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology, the Consumer Technology Association, Deltec, Dominion Energy, George Mason University, Innova, KPMG, Maximus, Microsoft, Noblesse, Northrop Grumman, PenFed Credit Union, Pillsbury, PNC, SAIC, Venable, Verizon, Virginia Tech, and our policy advisor, Hunton Andrews Kurth. We thank you all so much for your support. Now, I'd like to introduce our signature platinum sponsor and Attain Partners Senior Principal and Practice Leader, Reshma Patel-Jackson, who will now introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm really excited to join you today on behalf of Attain Partners. As you may have heard, on March 1st, we announced some big news at Attain, including the launch of Attain Partners. We're an innovative consulting firm providing strategic guidance and technology solutions to help education, nonprofits, healthcare, and state and local governments move their missions forward. Attain Partners is also currently facilitating the development of NVTC's strategic plan under Jennifer's leadership. Our clients include 100% of the Ivy League, more than 70 of the top 100 U.S. research institutions, and nearly 150 of the nation's largest nonprofit organizations. I'm also proud to share that we have completed more than 900 Salesforce projects on behalf of our public sector clients. If you're interested in learning more about Attain Partners, please visit us at attainpartners.com. It is also my privilege and honor to introduce today's distinguished speaker and moderator. Michael Chasen is the co-founder and CEO of Class Technologies, the maker of Class. He is an entrepreneur who has dedicated his career to improving the way people live and learn through technology. Most notably, Michael served as co-founder and CEO of Blackboard, a pioneering edtech company with software used by over 20,000 institutions in more than 70 countries by 20 million teachers and learners worldwide. He earned his MBA from Georgetown University and graduated with a degree in computer science from American University. Our moderator for today's program happens to be one of my favorite people and my boss, Greg Baroni. In addition to being chairman of the NVTC board, Greg is the co-founder of Attain and founder and CEO of Attain Partners. A longtime leader within the education, nonprofit, healthcare, and government industries, Greg is known for his bold and innovative ideas. He has received many awards, including GovCon Executive of the Year, EY Entrepreneur of the Year, and was named a NVTC Tech 100 Executive Honoree. It is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Greg, who will kick off today's fireside chat.
Thank you, Reshma, and thank you for your overly generous introduction there. Actually, our speaker today is the one who deserves that honor. More honors than certainly in terms of his landmark pioneering efforts in education. And so Michael, we are so, I have to say for me personally, so excited to be here with you, getting the opportunity to moderate our discussion. And so what I'd like to do is spend a little time with you kind of going through that journey of the Michael Chasen career. And so we'll start, you don't have to go all the way back to Connecticut where you were born, but let's start a little bit. Most people don't know about Michael Chasen, the person. And if you could just kind of share with us a little of the people that had a lot of influence with you in growing up, the things you did when you were young.
Certainly. So I did grow up in a small town in Cheshire, Connecticut, before eventually moving to the big city, Washington, D.C., where I got my undergraduate degree in computer science from American University, and then got my MBA from Georgetown. And it was after that I got my very first job working at KPMG Pete Morwick, and my boss's boss, really, Mr. Greg Baroni, working in the higher education technology consulting practice that he was starting. And it was after only a year, in fact, it was literally, I think, on my 1-year anniversary, about, give or take a few days of working there, that I remember Greg going up to you and saying, hey, I've learned a lot this 1 year that I've been working here. Myself and my old roommate from college and good friend, Matthew Patinsky, have decided to leave to start Blackboard. And probably a little bit naively, we tried to convince Greg to actually come and leave with us. Greg pointed out he had a real job as a partner at a very prominent firm, but was willing to be very supportive. And I remember well the conversation, Greg, that we had. That you said, "Hey, you believe in entrepreneurs. You yourself are an entrepreneur, and wanted to support us in any way." And as a partner of KPMG, you did, and that was really what allowed Blackboard to get started.
Well, Michael, I was really fortunate to have that opportunity to see the Blackboard launch. And in fact, I don't know, there might be a picture here somewhere that I know that's been floating through the internet that kind of chronicles me and you and the group. Look, there we are. You might remember this picture. This picture is the original group here that you can see Michael there on my left, your right, or I should everyone's left. And you can see that was the original group. And you can see I was kind of having a little fun with Matt Patinsky. He's the other gentleman on the picture on the left here. Michael, you might remember that was a day that we actually moved into the brownstone, and we celebrated that brownstone move-in day.
I remember it well because it was only during our lunch break when we were working at KPMG Pete Morwick, which was down on 20th and M, down in the heart of DC. During our lunch break, we just started walking around the neighborhood trying to find office space that we could rent, and we found a place literally only a block away. And there was a small brownstone that had a 2-room office that was available. So we and they would rent to basically kids who didn't have much of a credit history, which was the main requirement we were looking for in an office building. And we went and literally ended up just starting Blackboard a block away from where we were working at KPMG.
I was there from the beginning, the scrappy start that you all had. And then what a journey. I mean, raising $105 or $103 million, 5 rounds of financing. And I'm going to get into that later in terms of, for the entrepreneurs in our audience, just that whole journey of raising capital, what's the right time. But for now, I really like you to kind of chronicle a little bit, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the group, that period of time between 1997 and 2011, where you two left, took a number of those folks we saw in the picture, and then launched this incredible landmark-making firm that today is known as Blackboard. Tell us a little bit about that, Mike.
Well, the story of our move is one that I often have repeated but haven't shared in a while. And I actually think it really represents what entrepreneurs need to be when they're starting an organization, just to be very, very scrappy. So I remember Greg was, as I said, very supportive of us early on. And when we were leaving, Greg had said to us, you know what, Michael, I know computers are expensive. Why don't you guys we had desktops at the time, a large desktop. He said, you take your computers, borrow them for a couple of weeks or months until you have enough money to buy your own computers. We can get by here, just return them in a few weeks or months. And so I remember my last day of work at the large building that took up a whole block in downtown DC. We took our desktop computers and we put them on our chairs, and we're literally wheeling them out of the building. And of course, security stops us. And they said, you can't just wheel computers out of the building. What are you doing? We said, no, we have permission to take these. And we actually had a note that Greg had written, and we showed it to the security guards. And they called up Greg. They had a rotary phone, I guess. They called up Greg to make sure that we did indeed have permission to take the computers. And then they literally photocopied all of our driver's licenses, and they wrote down the serial numbers of all the computers. And that was totally fine because we weren't stealing the computers. We had permission to take them. We were stealing the chairs. So we stole 6 chairs from KPMG Mark that day. And the reason that I tell that story is, I mean, between the two of us, I think Matthew Batinsky and I had maybe less than $5,000 in our combined bank accounts. We didn't even realize how expensive office furniture was. Chairs could cost $100, $200. We would have literally just had chairs and desks and nothing else in the entire office. So by stealing a couple of chairs from KPMG, that really helped us save money in the beginning when it was important. And I think always represented just the scrappiness of the company, of focusing on just trying to do whatever you can to keep expenses down, focus on the product, and not necessarily on building some great office. And then, in fact, I literally kept that chair for almost 20 years. And I'd like to lie to you right now and tell you it was some great like Harman Kardon chair. It wasn't. It was like a shitty office chair. It like barely could adjust. It was like missing an arm. But I sat in that chair for 20 years because it always reminded me of our entrepreneurial and scrappy beginnings.
It's funny because I would remember meeting you in your offices sometimes in the different locations that you had Blackboard, and occasionally seeing that chair in your office. And I was like, Michael, are we ever going to get rid of this chair or return it back to KPMG? And you're right. It was in pretty bad shape the last time I saw it. But share with us, I mean, this was a story in which we were going to launch a landmark-oriented platform. And then you move forward instead with acquiring a series of acquisitions, in fact, that ultimately led to owning 80% market share. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how important acquisitions played into the strategy versus organic?
Well, back in the beginning, we had an idea that schools were going to start putting their course material online, both to complement and supplement traditional classes, as well as to even eventually have entire classes and degree programs online. And it was actually very funny because I remember one of our early investors, Novak Biddle, when they were looking at our first round of financing, they called me up and they said, Michael, we've spoken to a number of schools about your idea. And I said, oh, that's great. Who'd you speak to? What'd they say? They said, oh, we spoke to Georgetown and University of Pittsburgh and Yeshiva University, a number of other schools. And I said, that's great. What did they think of our idea of putting course material online? And these potential investors said they're not interested. They said teachers are Luddites and would never use the technology. Students aren't asking for it. And by the way, it might be illegal to put grades online. Now, all of those schools ended up becoming our clients longer term. And actually that firm that had called those schools and done that diligence, Novak Bill, ended up being our first Series A investors. But it was funny because back then, people just didn't necessarily understand that the internet was going to fundamentally change education and that it was going to be an integral part of the education experience. So our idea, though, was to develop this software that would make it easier for teachers and schools to put these courses online. And then when we started, we actually found that there was a group of students at Cornell University led by Dan Kane and Tim Chi and others. And they had actually developed some tools that Cornell was using, as well as a couple of other schools as well. So early on, we flew down to Cornell. We met with these students and said, hey, we actually have an office. We have some leads on some financing. We have the backing of some great leaders at KPMG. And we have a great name for the company, Blackboard. And then you guys have some product and clients. We should merge together. And so right away in the very beginning of our history, we ended up merging with this group of students out of Cornell. And that truly formed Blackboard. And we suddenly had a product that was in the market. And we really brought that product to light. And that eventually became Blackboard Learn. After that, we experienced tremendous growth over the first 2 or 3 years. and leverage that success that we were having and the money that we're making into also starting to acquire other e-learning system companies. So we did eventually acquire a number of other e-learning products, Prometheus, WebCT, Angel, and even entered the open source space and became a leading Moodle provider. We decided that we wanted to support learning, whether it was on our platform or other platforms, and really be that primary company driving forward this vision of bringing education online.
You know, Michael, you and Matt launched this firm pre-.com bust, and then survived it. I'm curious, and I think our audience would be curious. How did you manage to do that? I mean, you all managed to be one of the few darlings of that era that actually survived and did incredibly well. What were the key factors that led to that?
Well, I think one of the key factors was during the first, what you say called .com bubble, a lot of companies were coming out with new innovative models where they were just trying to get a lot of users for advertising and not necessarily generating a significant revenue. Our idea was we were going to build a product and that product had value. We would offer it as an annual subscription to keep the price low so that schools could easily buy it and not have to go through the big RFP process. But it was a recurring subscription, so they'd continue to pay us to use it each year. And this was back before the true days of SaaS. So we were one of these early companies doing kind of a SaaS model, software as a subscription, although it wasn't hosted. It was still locally deployed on each of the institution's own computer servers. So that enabled us to get early traction, and suddenly we were making $1 million and then 10 million and then even 30 and 40 million in revenue a year. So when the bubble actually ended up collapsing and a whole bunch of companies ended up going out of business, we had a significant revenue stream and we were almost break even. And so it was just focusing on the fundamentals of having a good business model that allowed us to succeed when some of the other companies that started during our time weren't able to.
So, Michael, how important it is, for the entrepreneurs in the audience to focus in on, you said right away, it was business model. And then I would say, how do you balance growth versus bottom line performance for a product company?
So when you're trying to measure your kind of top line growth versus bottom line profitability, if you're a company and you have over 20% top line growth, then you should be taking every dollar we were doing over 600 million in revenue. So we really focused on investing everything we could to just continue to drive that engine that we're building. And then once you achieve a certain size and your growth rate ends up slowing to like say less than 10%, then you can start dropping profit to the bottom line. But if you have high growth, you want to invest everything you can back into the company.
That's great, Mike. And so let's one of the things that you did in 2004, you actually went public at that point. In June of 2004. I'm interested to know what were the catalysts for that, and then 8 years later you go private again with Providence Equity. So curious, give us a little insight into both of those chapters.
Well, when you go public, it's just another round of financing. Really, you're just offering some of your shares to the general public to raise capital instead of going to a specific investment fund. And we were of the right size. We were doing over 100 million in revenue. We wanted to start actually doing more M&A. We wanted to take the money, expand to have a greater footprint in international. So it made sense for us to access the public markets at the time. So Credit Suisse First Boston, which was one of the leading banking firms out there, and also they had a leading practice in education. They actually took us public, and we did very well. We were valued at around $400 million, and then as a public company, we then ran it as a public company for almost 8 years, hitting our numbers every single quarter for 8 years, before eventually selling to Providence Equity Partners for just under 1.8 billion. So we had really significant growth, and we leveraged being a public company, the extra visibility, the ability to access the capital market for financing, to continue to do M&A, and to expand internationally.
That's great. I mean, any particular reason that you decided at I guess in 2010-11 to go back private after being public? Was it some people say it's the quarterly treadmill, the 13-week treadmill? Was any of that weighed into it, or was it just the right time? Mike, you're on mute.
We had a good run as a public company. There was a lot of interest, though, in the space at the time of potentially doing a large capital infusion to allow for even more expansion. And so a couple of firms had approached us about potentially going private, and the offers on the table just made sense for our shareholders. The premium that they were offering, it made sense for us to consider going private, taking this cash infusion and investing it to grow in other ways.
And then following that, Mike, shortly thereafter, you decide to step down after the incredible run you had leading Blackboard. How did you recharge? I mean, how did you end up spending your time? Anything fun or exciting? Or?
Yeah, so I ended up then about a year and a half later stepping down as CEO of Blackboard, and then I took the weekend off, and then I started another technology company called Social Radar. We figured out how to use technology to get improved map location data and improved tracking on your cell phone. It was just a small company, and to be about a 20-person company. Ran that for 3 years. We sold that to Verizon. Then from that, I ended up taking a job as CEO of a drone company called Precision Hawk out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And while I was passionate about education, I was also just passionate about building businesses. And so for me, it was very interesting to try these other industries, both in the mobile space and then in the drone space. And I actually have learned a lot getting to work in these other industries, and then seeing specifically what strategies that we had done at Blackboard and how they could be applied to these other industries. And so I was CEO of Precision Hawk for 3 years, right up until the pandemic, when I left the company and kind of just like everybody else was home, sitting around doing nothing. And I saw the challenges that my 3 children were having in their homeschooling. They're all in public schools. They were all, my daughter was in 2nd grade at the time. My son was in 8th grade. And my older daughter was in 10th grade. And they were having really trouble engaging in their online Zoom classes. And so we spoke with a number of teachers and asked them, why were they having a hard time really engaging with the students? And they said, look, these virtual meeting tools are great for lecturing online, and it's great for having group discussions, but they don't actually bring everything of the physical classroom online. We do a lot more in the physical classroom. We do everything from taking attendance to handing out assignments to giving tests or quizzes to talking one-on-one with the students to grading work, as well as giving a lecture or having group general discussions. And of course, with my background, both from Blackboard and I have a degree in computer science, I knew that Zoom had an SDK. So we decided to then build a set of teaching and learning tools that you could add on to Zoom. And that was the start of my new company, Class Technologies. We started it, probably just about 4 or 5 months ago now. And we're up to over 120 people. Our product just came out in a general availability on the Macintosh about 2 weeks ago. Our Windows, iPad, and Android and Chromebook are all currently in beta, and it'll be out in GA in the next couple of weeks. And just in the announcements of the product, we've had over 11,000 inbound leads from people at different institutions that are interested in utilizing our technology. So I'm back in the ed tech space, doing what I'm very, very passionate about, and strangely enough, building e-learning tools again.
And you're off to an incredibly fast start. Even on the capital raising front, you've had 2 rounds already in the very short period of time, already up to 46 million. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, and by the way, the who's who has invested in it. You might want to share a little bit for everybody's benefit, some of the mavens that have been part of this group.
So we were very fortunate. We did a Series A financing round. We raised about 16 million, and we had some very prominent people that were well connected at Zoom. So Santi from Emergence Capital, who's on the board of Zoom, co-led the round. But we also got Jim Scheiman from Maven Ventures, who's credited with naming Zoom, and Bill Tye, the very first investor of Zoom, all came in as investors. And then we had some leading ed tech funds. Deborah Quazzo from GSV co-led the round as well. So we really got together a group of people that were well connected in the Zoom and virtual meeting space and leading ed tech providers to really help us figure out how to navigate and grow this company. We then ended up doing a second round just a few weeks after our first round that was co-led by Insight Partners and Owl Ventures, 2 other big ed tech investment funds. So we really have a great group of people who are both experts in virtual meeting technology and Zoom in particular, and the education space that are helping us, I think, build the next great company in education.
Yeah, Michael, you know, what's terrific about that is the fact that so many people are rallying around this vision that you have. Share with us a little bit about the vision for Class EDU.
Well, you know, if I told you that there were literally hundreds of thousands of classes online today, yet teachers couldn't take attendance, hand out assignments, or do work in class, give an exam, proctor that exam, grade it, or talk one-on-one with students, you would say, well, how are teachers even being successful in engaging the students and really teaching and learning online? The idea for Class Technologies was we bring the physical classroom experience into the online world. Everything a teacher can do in the physical class, if they use Class Technologies, which adds on to Zoom teaching and learning tools, they can now do in the online environment. And it makes it a much more engaging experience for both the students and the teachers. And so we've been building that tool set. We have over 100 clients already. And as I said, over 11,000 inbound leads that have come in just the last 4 months.
Mike, you've referenced Zoom several times now. I mean, you've obviously chosen to partner up with Zoom. What was your rationale for picking Zoom versus, let's say, Microsoft Teams or WebEx as a platform?
Well, Zoom really has the market share in education. They're the leading company. Most classes are taught online in Zoom. So we just wanted to make sure we were building tools on the platform that had the biggest install base. That's not saying that in the future we might not also come out with class for Microsoft Teams or class for WebEx, depending on how that market penetration looks in the future. But right now, Zoom is the industry standard for classes online.
That's great. That's great. And you referenced that you're building a company, not just, you're not a single solution. Where do you see the future of EdTech playing beyond the virtual classroom?
Well, look, I don't think that you can train hundreds of thousands of teachers and put millions of students through online learning, which has happened during this pandemic, and not expect there to be a tremendous effect in education in the long run. I mean, I think this has sped up the adoption of technology in education, particularly in K-12, easily by 5 to 10 years. So I think there's going to be a profound effect on what's gone on during COVID and then how education utilizes technology in the long run. So I think it's going to be some of the most exciting times for EdTech over the next few years.
You know, the pandemic has brought unprecedented change to our society. And one of the things I understand from you is you are currently building 100% virtual company. Tell us a little bit about that. And is that your intention for the future as well?
Well, I mean, we're building a company during COVID. So by definition, everyone's actually just started working from home, come day one. And we've also started tapping into people that were all over the United States. We have a bunch of employees that are here in DC and in Austin, Texas, and in San Francisco, California, as well as in Utah, and then even around the world. And so we're actually just getting top talent from not only across the United States, but around the world. And we're also building a company that sells virtual classroom technology. So everything really about us is virtual. So it just made sense to build and put in place that infrastructure for a virtual company that can last for the long run.
Is it your intent to continue this without any physical footprint? Yeah.
I mean, we have put in place the infrastructure kind of from day one to support a virtual company. And it is interesting. I mean, it's a new challenge. It's something that I hadn't done before. But for example, we do things like every day at 10 a.m. we have a company kickoff meeting. And we have different topics each day, but just spend 15, 20 minutes getting the whole company together, giving them an update on what's happening, whether it's in sales and marketing or a product demo or talking about our services or what we're seeing out in the industry. And then we try to do fun things. All new employees have to create 2 TikToks to introduce themselves to the company, which is funny because only some small percent of the company actually even has or knows what TikTok is. So literally everyone in their first week downloads TikToks, has to create a video, and then we show that at the end of the week as a way to introduce themselves to the company. And so we try to do fun, interesting things like that to create a sense of culture and keep everybody informed and have open communication and transparency as we're trying to build this great company.
That's great. This program is called the Masters of Leadership, and being a student of great leaders and from great companies, I've really did spend a lot of time studying the work of Jim Collins, Clay Christensen, Jack Welch, and others. And for me personally, I'd like to say that I had the incredible pleasure of working for leaders like Rand Blazer and John Madonna and others that really helped shape my career. Are there, I guess I'd ask you, what leaders have inspired you most, and what did you learn from them?
Well, really, I'd say one of the biggest influences on my overall career development was actually working with you, Greg, both as my first boss and someone that was just very supportive of entrepreneurs in general. And that's when I also learned to be supportive of the entrepreneurs that I would end up working with. Secondarily, I'd say it wasn't necessarily people in more senior positions to me. It was actually more the number of peers that helped us build the company. I learned so much from my fellow co-founders, not only Matthew Batinsky and Dan Kane and Tim Chi and Stephen Gilfus and Andrew Rosen and Mike Pettit, a huge number of people that just all got together early on to help us build this company. Every one of them bringing their individual particular strengths, and every one of them, helping me put together the strategy and execute on the operations to build Blackboard. So I really consider all of my them to be not only coworkers, but both friends and mentors.
Michael, I think you should be very proud, because when you look at, just like in the NFL or any of the sports franchises, you look at great coach and the coaching tree they've developed. I look at Michael Chasen and Matt Batinsky and look at the tree you've developed of entrepreneurs that have followed in your footsteps. I think of Greg Davies, and he's a 3-time entrepreneur that was one of that picture in that original picture we had. So, I guess what I'd say to you or ask you is, what advice would you give a young entrepreneur at this point? I mean, in terms of if they have a vision, what do they do?
Well, look, I always tell young entrepreneurs that there are 2 critical things to be successful. One, you have to be passionate about what you do, because you're going to be doing it just all of the time. I mean, I always have lived my companies, and every waking minute of a day, I'm either thinking about it or doing work. So definitely pick an area you're passionate about. The second thing is surround yourself with great people. And Greg, you had mentioned this just about the network, or people call it the Blackboard Mafia. When you actually look down the list of the people that worked at Blackboard, Matt Batinsky, my co-founder, is CEO of Parchment, a company worth several $100 million. Dan Kane is running Modernizing Medicine, a company worth probably almost well over $1 billion. Tim Chi got together with Lee Wang, started Wedding Wire, a multi-billion-dollar leading company in the wedding space. Andrew Rosen became CEO of his own company. Matthew Small became CEO of his company. Greg Davies became CEO of his company. Michael Stanton's CFO of a multi-billion-dollar company. So all of the people that I work with are now either CEOs or CFOs of their own companies. And so that shows you just, I think, the talented group of people that we had assembled at Blackboard. And that was the real reason that the company was successful. There were lots of other e-learning software companies that were less than a fraction of our size. And I think it's because we had a great team of passionate people who are also successful entrepreneurs. And then I think that's shown by the fact that they all went on to create their own companies, several of them worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. It's amazing when you hear that story, just all that was accomplished by all those people. And we started in that ed tech group we had at KPMG, so many of us. Let's talk about the region for a minute. A lot of people say, and they've approached us over the past few years, this region is not a great region. And on the contrary, when you look at how much technology is ever present in this region, from AOL to Amazon, and you, Michael and Matt, chose DC as your residence, not only as your residence, but also the home of Blackboard, and then Social Radar, and now Class EDU. You've chosen this region to do it. So what makes this region special? Well, a few things. First of all, I actually think just in particular, the Washington, D.C. area has a focus of educational resources. There's a close mixture of education and politics. The KPMG, which had one of the leading ed tech practices, was down here. A number of other education consulting firms are all out of DC. So I actually do believe DC in particular is good for education and ed tech companies. All that being said, we started the company because this is where all my stuff was. Matthew Batinsky and I graduated college here, so we lived here, so we started the company here. Now, all that being said, look, I think certainly San Francisco and New York are 2 leading startup or technology key areas, but Outside of that, I definitely think in the kind of the tier 2 of places to start a company, you have your Washington, D.C., your Boston, your Austin, Texas, are all great places where there's a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of opportunity. And therefore, I think there are a lot of startups. So I think DC is actually a great place to start a company. And obviously, we did very successful in starting Blackboard and my subsequent companies and now Class Technologies here.
I'll ask one more question, and I'm going to then open it up. I know a lot of people are. I can see the chat room questions keying up here, so I want to make sure I give plenty of opportunity for those people to weigh in here. But we're talking about earlier. I referenced the incredible success you had both at Blackboard, then Social Radar, and now with Class EDU raising funds, raising capital. How do you decide? In terms of the type of capital to raise, the valuation on a pre-money basis or a pre-revenue basis, control versus non-control. What are the critical steps people should consider?
Look, I think the most important thing to consider is actually putting all that aside. You want to find someone that you believe that you can partner with and will be there to support you in the long run. It's very easy to get capital and money when things are going great, but what you really need is people that can help you go through the tough spots when you're running low on funds or you have to make key strategic decisions. So to me, I always explain to founders, it's not just about looking for someone that's going to give you $1, because that person's going to be your board member and sitting across from you for the next decade as you build this company. And that's why you want to be very selective about who you take capital from. And I think that's the most important part of the capital raising process.
Great. Well, Michael, I'm going to turn to the audience here. We have our first question coming from Jackie Black, who's the Director of Strategic Alliances at CTA, the Consumer Technology Association. Jackie?
Hi, thank you. Hi, Michael. That was a really interesting conversation. Thank you. I was definitely an early Blackboard user. My question is, we know the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of remote work and remote learning by years, if not decades. You talked about that earlier. But with remote work, we know employees don't want to be back in the office in full time. With remote learning, we're seeing that the desire skews towards meeting in person. So what do you see as the future saturation of education technology, and will the need for platforms like Class remain in such high demand?
Oh, well, look, certainly once everyone goes back to school, there'll be less usage of virtual classroom technology, but I think there'll be more than there was before the pandemic. Look, I think we've now trained hundreds of thousands of teachers and millions of students in how to be successful in online learning. And I think that there's still a long way for us to go. But what I think this means in the long run is that you're going to see certainly a lot more online education in K-12. But I also think you're going to see the lowering of costs and the increasing of access to high quality education because of everyone's familiarity with taking classes online. So I do think that it really is going to have a profound effect and have technology be a lot more prominent throughout K-12 as well as college and graduate school and corporate training.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Mike. So I have another question from David Harvey from King and Spalding, and he's asking, going back to that region, why this region? He said his question is, were you ever pressured to move your company to another part of the country? And why did you end up staying here for all three ventures?
I mean, certainly we would on occasion have discussions, hey, does it make sense for us to be a West Coast company? But again, there's so many education companies and focus and resources here in the DC area because we're building an ed tech company. We thought that DC was a great place to be. And again, as I said, all my stuff is here. So that was also a driving factor.
All right. I have a question from Alex Brown, a young entrepreneur. He's asking that you and I had referenced acquisitions as a critical component of the Blackboard's early growth strategy. The question from him is, what criteria did you use to decide whether a target acquisition was a fit or not?
Well, we had put in place a specific strategy, which we wanted to do a little bit. We thought that if there was a standard platform, there'd be actually a lot of additional opportunity to build upon it. So like, for example, if you had a standard teaching and learning platform, then people can make third-party content and third-party apps that plugged into it. So one way in which we wanted to standardize the platform was acquiring other platforms, then merging everybody onto a single code base or technology. So it was actually part of our creating the operating system of education, if you will, strategy that we were executing against. So I think that's really the most important thing is making sure that you have a strategy that you're following for your M&A. And then if you have a strategy, then of course, secondarily, culture and price and fit and timing all come into play. But you don't want to just look at M&A opportunistically. You want to make sure that you're following and executing against a strategy that's going to help your company grow.
He has a follow-on question. It was a critical part of your strategy at Blackboard. How much will M&A play a role in your strategy for Class EDU?
Well, there's really no one that's building add-on technologies yet for Zoom, and specifically, definitely not in the education space. So we're really the only company out there that's created teaching and learning tools to add on to Zoom. So we don't really have, any competitors right now. I'm not saying that we wouldn't consider adding specific kind of feature technology acquisitions, but part of our play here is not going to be trying to consolidate the market. We're right now the only player in the market.
Great. I have a question from a marketing leader who's asking, her name's Maureen Goldman, and she's asking the question, if you were doing it all over again, what would you do differently? Would you do anything different?
Look, I tell people it's a similar question. People say, like, what mistakes did you make along the way? I always go, oh my God, we made mistakes every single day. The good thing we did is we always constantly learn from those mistakes and would redirect our strategy to address the new challenges that were coming up. That's a long-winded way of saying, I'm not saying that we didn't make mistakes on the way or have problems or, don't I wish we had made different decisions at certain points in time, but I don't think I would have changed anything because at the end of the day, I was happy with the growth that we saw and the outcomes that we produced with the company. So I was happy with where Blackboard ended up, and I'm happy with where I am now with Class Technology. So there's nothing I really would have changed, but that's not me not acknowledging that we did make tons of mistakes and run into tons of problems and errors along the way. I just think at the end of the day, those helped us grow and to create the company that we ended up building.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a linear path to success without any obstacles or trials. And you're right, we're going to make mistakes, but you keep driving forward. I have a question.
Yeah, I was very look. And I had such a great journey. We started in a brownstone in downtown DC. Then we grew. We got big office space. And then we had some of the offices in other towns, and then 20 offices around the world. And now I'm working out of my kitchen. So really, everything comes full circle.
I have a question from Reshma Patel Jackson, who introduced you. She says, "What drives your passion for EdTech?"
I've just always been someone that wanted to do something that would have an effect, and I believe that the way that you both can address everything from poverty and employment and access is by elevating everyone and putting a focus in education. And if you can educate people more, they can get better jobs, they can make better career and life decisions. And so to be developing technology that helps with that. And so if I could do something that can lower the cost and increase the access of education, to me, I feel like I'm doing good by doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. Reshma has a follow-on question asking, I know it's only been a few short months while you've launched Class EDU. She's asking, what are the biggest challenges that you've had to already overcome in the short period?
I think everyone is having a challenge in, working during a pandemic and figuring out how you spend all day long interacting just with people online. So whether it's a fireside chat that, you would have usually have done sitting next to each other in front of a fireplace at a conference being online, or whether it's your company meetings being online. So, I think just the same challenges that everyone is facing. I'm trying to create a company from scratch during a pandemic. I think there's certainly not only a lot of interesting challenges that have come along with that, but I think in particular, it's been a very interesting learning experience.
Mike, I'm doing my best to keep up with all the questions here. I have a question from James Leach, who's asking, how important is security to online learning systems like Class? And I'll ask a second question after you answer that one.
Well, certainly, we are benefiting from the fact that Zoom has a high level of security and compliance already built into the product. And since we're building on top of that, we actually get to leverage that security. In addition to that, we actually are adding even more security on top of that because there's some challenges of people showing up for classes uninvited, and of course we're dealing with educational information, which is very confidential information. So it's definitely a very high priority for us as a company.
Okay. And his other question was, can online learning succeed without broadband from your perspective?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not saying it can't succeed, but I certainly think that having high-speed internet is critical to having online education be a formidable movement in education overall. And if you really want to have a high degree of success, you need to make sure that everybody has broadband.
Okay, I have a question here. You've always had companies in the product side of the industry, if you will, and creating innovative technology products. What advice would you give to service providers or service companies that are in areas such as cyber or cloud?
Look, I'm not sure that I have particular advice for those type of companies. Not that I'd have advice for product companies either. I go back to what I was saying, what I often just share with entrepreneurs. Whether you're delivering a product or a service, if you're passionate about it and you have a great technology or a great service and you're able to relay that vision out to the clients, that's what's going to make you successful.
I have a question here from Ganesh Tayi, who's from Never Lose a Deal. The question is, what challenges did you face growing sales in the early years of scaling Blackboard, and now that what you might be facing if you are at all with Class EDU?
Well, I think the challenge you face in sales is just the same general challenge you face in building the company. I mean, you're now hiring salespeople who have to go out there and show the product and explain the vision and be able to, not only, pitch why your product is better than the other products out there, but how this is going to help the institution fundamentally improve the way that they're teaching and learning. And so it's all about hiring quality people. So I don't think it's specifically a sales and marketing problem, but how do you actually have a company that, as you're growing, you continue to bring on great people that can relay the vision that we started the company with. And I think that's the biggest challenge that organizations face.
Yeah, I always tell people that what plays into that is a lot of pattern recognition, kind of being able to sort through hiring the right people that are good at sales versus good at the back office. I have a question from Cliff Chiat from iHeartRadio, who's asking, are there any social responsibility programs that are near and dear to your heart?
Well, look, I'm very passionate actually about education, obviously, because of Blackboard and class technologies. And it was funny that the previous person had mentioned the broadband. Look, I think that during COVID, when you see how the different communities have gotten together to help support their schools or get computers in the hands of the kids that didn't have computers or get broadband access to areas that didn't have broadband access, all of those programs are very, very important to me personally, because I do think having access to technology means access to education.
That's great. I got a question from JD Darby, who's asking, when times get tough, what did you tell yourself to keep motivated and focused?
I mean, and times got tough a lot. What I told myself was my worst case scenario is I would just move back in with my parents. They had an extra room in my basement, as my mom used to remind me all the time. So that's what I would tell myself, that my worst case scenario was I'd have to go live with my parents. And that onto itself was a motivating factor to make sure that I was successful. So right there. Look, you gotta be focused on building a company for the long haul. So of course I'd run into roadblocks and challenges really every day or every week, but you have to have that long-term focus and just keep driving in that direction and work through those challenges.
Yeah, I think that's it. You have to have that steadfastness that enables you to persevere and be resilient through those challenges. And you've echoed the same sentiment. One of the questions I have here from the audience is, you've referenced a lot of acquisitions were a critical part of your Blackboard strategy. How did you maintain the Blackboard culture in the presence of all those acquisitions?
Well, I think we were very fortunate because a lot of the acquisitions we did were other people that were also passionate about education. So we automatically, had that overlap. But yeah, certainly sometimes it was harder than other times. And when we try to come in and actually show everybody just what the culture of Blackboard was like and kind of hopefully try to, win them over. But I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't a challenge. In fact, I'm not sure that we were successful with every acquisition in doing that, but I think we were successful more than we weren't.
And were there any acquisitions that you would say this was the hallmark of success for us, and this one boy, there are a lot of lessons learned. I won't go down that path again. And maybe you don't want to single any out. But what were the characteristics?
I think the characteristics were already the companies had a good culture, were the acquisitions that were more successful for us. But the cultures were already more of an overlap. That's
great. Well, Michael, I know that we're coming to the end here, so I have a fun question for you. I think, and I know I was at a few of these, so I want to ask this question. Blackboard World celebrations were renowned for being incredibly fun. They're legendary for your moves on the dance floor. Will we see similar events like that in the future with Class EDU?
Well, hopefully one day when everyone starts meeting back together again, we certainly would have conferences. And, right now you can still see some of my dance moves if you follow me on TikTok. Other than that, it still may be a while before we're all getting together and meeting in person. But yeah, look, we're trying to create a great company and industry culture at Class Technologies. And we're borrowing a lot of what we learned and did at Blackboard while we're doing it. So hopefully we'll have some of that same kind of fun again in the future.
Well, we look forward to it. I look forward to the invitation. Any final words for this audience that you'd like to share?
No, look, I always enjoy these conversations. And Greg, of course, it's always great connecting with you. You're such both a positive influence and a great mentor to me personally throughout all of these years. And the thing that I'll say is, building upon one of the questions that you had earlier, if you're an entrepreneur and you're interested in starting your own company, and if you're interested in creating your own destiny, I got involved in Blackboard and Class Technologies because I was passionate about education and passionate about making a difference. And I was successful because I surrounded myself with other people who had that same kind of passion and could add their area of expertise into making sure that Blackboard was a successful company. And I think that those are the two reasons why Blackboard was successful. These other companies I've done have been successful as well, and why I think Class Technologies will be successful. We have a group of people that are passionate about what we're doing. We're making a difference, and we're truly hiring just some of the best people. So by the way, if you're looking for a job, definitely visit class.com and check out our website. But if you're interested in starting your own company, please feel free to reach out. I always love connecting with other entrepreneurs and speaking with other visionaries. So Greg, thank you very much for the fireside chat. And thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
It's our pleasure, Michael. And on behalf of the Northern Virginia Tech Council, we just want to extend a deep, heartfelt gratitude for you joining us. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael and Greg, for that fantastic discussion. You guys really hit it out of the park, so thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for attending today's virtual event. Please stay in network with your fellow attendees in the social lounge, and I hope to see you at a future NVTC event soon. And please stay safe and healthy and have a great rest of your day.